was one of those mornings where everything seemed to fall perfectly into place. The sun was shining brightly, the air carried a cool breeze, and Alex felt like they were on top of the world. After grabbing their favorite coffee from the local cafe, they hopped into their sleek Tesla Model 3, a car that had quickly become more than just a mode of transportation. It was a symbol of hard work paying off. Alex loved every detail about it. The smooth acceleration, the quiet hum of the engine, and even the way people would occasionally stop to admire it when parked. That day, Alex needed to make a quick stop at their gated community's clubhouse for an important meeting with some colleagues. They pulled into the visitor parking lot, which was clearly marked with signs indicating it was available for short-term use by residents and guests alike. It wasn't unusual for Alex to park there during busy days since the main residential lots often filled up fast. As they stepped out of the car, they couldn't help but take a moment to appreciate how smoothly the morning had gone so far. Life felt good, almost too good to be true. But then, as if on cue, trouble arrived in the form of Karen. If you lived in this neighborhood for any length of time, chances are you'd heard about, or directly encountered, Karen. She was infamous within the Homeowners Association, HOA, for her strict interpretation of the rules and her tendency to enforce them with an iron fist. Some called her HOA Karen, though not usually to her face. Her reputation preceded her. She was known for nitpicking over minor infractions, sending strongly worded emails about misplaced trash cans or slightly overgrown lawns, and generally, making life difficult for anyone who crossed her path. Karen approached Alex with purposeful strides, her arms already crossed tightly across her chest. There was no mistaking the look on her face. It was pure indignation mixed with something else, maybe frustration or anger. Before Alex could even greet her, Karen launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "You can't park here," she said sharply, pointing at the spot where the Tesla was neatly parked. "This space is reserved." Alex blinked, momentarily caught off guard. They glanced around to confirm they hadn't accidentally parked in someone's personal spot or blocked access to anything important. Nope, everything looked fine. The sign overhead clearly stated visitor parking, and Alex knew they weren't breaking any rules. Still, they decided to play it safe and explain politely. "I'm only staying for a short while," Alex replied calmly, holding up their phone to show the calendar reminder for their meeting. "This is visitor parking, right? I'll move it once I'm done." Instead of softening, Karen's expression hardened further. She tilted her head slightly, narrowing her eyes as if trying to solve some invisible puzzle. Then, without warning, she dropped a bombshell. "That's my Tesla," she declared loudly, jabbing a finger toward the car. For a split second, Alex thought they must have misheard. Surely Karen didn't mean what it sounded like she meant. But before Alex could respond, Karen doubled down. "Hand over the keys," she demanded, her voice rising. "That car belongs to me." Now Alex was truly confused. This wasn't just a disagreement over parking rules anymore. It was something entirely different. Their mind raced through possibilities. Had Karen lost her marbles? Was this some kind of prank? Or worse, was she actually serious? Deciding to stay calm, Alex took a deep breath and tried reasoning with her. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding," they said slowly, enunciating each word carefully. "I bought this car months ago. It's registered under my name." Karen wasn't having it. In fact, she seemed to grow angrier with every passing second. "No, no, no," she exclaimed, shaking her head emphatically. "Someone stole my car and replaced it with this one." Her tone suggested she genuinely believed what she was saying, which made the whole situation feel surreal. Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or cry. How could anyone mistake their own car for someone else's, especially when Teslas came with unique identification numbers and detailed registration records? Determined to clear things up, Alex unlocked the driver's side door and retrieved the vehicle's registration papers from the glove compartment. They handed the document to Karen, hoping it would settle the matter once and for all. But instead of backing down, Karen barely glanced at the paper. She waved it away dismissively, muttering something about forgery and stolen property. At this point, Alex realized they were dealing with someone who wasn't operating on logic or reason. Whatever was driving Karen's behavior, it wasn't grounded in reality. The commotion had begun drawing attention from nearby residents, many of whom were stepping outside to see what all the yelling was about. A small crowd started forming, with some people filming the exchange on their phones while others whispered among themselves. Everyone knew Karen's reputation, and most assumed this was just another example of her over-the-top antics. But for Alex, the situation was escalating quickly, and they needed to find a way to de-escalate it before things got completely out of hand. "Look," Alex said firmly, addressing Karen directly. "If you really believe this is your car, we can call the police and sort this out officially. They can check the VIN number and verify ownership." To most rational people, this suggestion would have been enough to end the argument. But Karen wasn't most people. Instead of agreeing, she bristled at the mention of law enforcement. "Fine," she snapped, throwing her hands up dramatically. "Call them, but don't think you're getting away with stealing my car." As Alex dialed the non-emergency line for the local police department, they couldn't help but wonder how such a mundane morning had turned into a full-blown spectacle. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of a bizarre chain of events that would leave the entire neighborhood talking for weeks to come. As Alex waited for the police to arrive, the situation grew more surreal by the minute. Karen stood her ground, arms still crossed, glaring at the Tesla as if it had personally offended her. Her conviction that the car belonged to her was unwavering, despite all evidence pointing otherwise. Alex couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and disbelief. How could someone so adamantly insist on something so obviously false? It was like watching a scene from a movie, a bad one at that. But this was real life, and Alex was stuck in the middle of it. The growing crowd of neighbors added another layer of complexity to the situation. Some were clearly entertained, exchanging amused glances and chuckling quietly. Others looked concerned, unsure whether to intervene or simply observe. A few people even started recording videos on their phones, capturing every heated exchange between Alex and Karen. One neighbor joked under his breath, "This is better than reality TV," which earned a round of quiet laughter from those nearby. But amid the humor, there was also an underlying tension. Everyone knew Karen's reputation, and no one wanted to be caught in her crosshairs. Karen, however, seemed oblivious to the audience gathering around her. She paced back and forth near the Tesla, occasionally stopping to point at it accusingly. "It's mine," she repeated loudly, almost as if saying it enough times would make it true. When Alex tried once again to explain that the registration papers proved ownership, Karen shot back, "Those are fake. Someone forged them to cover up the theft." Her voice rose with each word, drawing even more attention from passers-by. At this point, Alex realized they weren't dealing with a rational person. Karen wasn't just upset about parking rules. Something deeper was driving her behavior. Was it jealousy? Misplaced anger? Or maybe something else entirely? Whatever it was, it had consumed her completely. Alex decided to focus on keeping things calm until the authorities arrived. They took slow, deliberate breaths, reminding themselves not to let Karen's theatrics get the best of them. Meanwhile, the crowd began sharing stories about Karen's past antics. One man recounted how she had once filed a formal complaint because someone left a decorative pumpkin on their porch past Halloween. Another neighbor chimed in, describing how Karen had reported a family for having too many potted plants outside their front door. These tales painted a picture of someone who thrived on control and authority, often using the HOA's rules as a weapon against others. The anecdotes drew nods of agreement from the group, along with murmurs of disapproval directed at Karen. But then something unexpected happened. Sarah, a longtime resident who owned a nearly identical Tesla, stepped forward. Her presence immediately shifted the dynamic of the confrontation. Sarah approached cautiously, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Karen," she said gently, "what exactly makes you think this car is yours?" Karen turned to face Sarah, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Because I've been looking for my Tesla for weeks," she exclaimed, throwing her arms up in exasperation. "And now here it is, parked right in front of me." Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Weeks? Karen, I've seen your car recently. You don't own a Tesla. Karen faltered for a moment, her confidence wavering. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. That's what they want you to think, she snapped, gesturing wildly toward Alex. They stole it and replaced it with a fake. Don't you see? Sarah exchanged a glance with Alex, silently communicating her disbelief. Then, turning back to Karen, she asked, Do you know my car looks almost exactly like this one? Maybe you're confusing them. Karen froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For a brief moment, it seemed like she might admit she'd made a mistake. But pride, or perhaps stubbornness, got the better of her. No, she shouted, her voice cracking slightly. I deserve that car. And if it's not mine, why does it look just like mine? The absurdity of her statement caused ripples of laughter to spread through the crowd. Even some of Karen's staunchest defenders struggled to suppress smiles. Alex, sensing the tide turning in their favor, decided to press further. Karen, they said calmly, if you really believe this is your car, why don't we compare the VIN numbers? That'll clear everything up. Karen hesitated, clearly thrown off balance. She opened her mouth to respond but closed it again without saying anything. The mention of verifying vehicle identification numbers struck a nerve, likely because she knew it would expose her claim as baseless. Still, she refused to back down entirely. Instead, she resorted to threats, warning Alex that she would take legal action if they didn't hand over the keys immediately. By now, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to almost comical. Neighbors whispered among themselves, speculating about what might happen next. Would Karen actually call a lawyer? Would she try to physically block Alex from leaving? The possibilities seemed endless, and the crowd eagerly awaited the next twist in this bizarre drama. Just as things reached a fever pitch, the distant sound of sirens broke through the chaos. Relief washed over Alex as they spotted two police cruisers pulling into the gated community. The officers stepped out, their expressions neutral but alert. They quickly assessed the scene, a luxury car at the center of attention, a visibly agitated woman pacing nearby, and a sizable group of onlookers filming and whispering. It was clear this wasn't your average parking dispute. One officer approached Alex first, asking for their side of the story. Alex explained the situation calmly, presenting the registration papers and offering to provide any additional documentation needed. The other officer turned to Karen, who launched into a passionate defense of her claim. She spoke rapidly, jumping from one accusation to another, her words tumbling over each other in her urgency to be heard. At one point, she even suggested that Alex had hacked into the HOA system to falsify records. The officers listened patiently, jotting down notes as they reviewed the evidence. They inspected the Tesla closely, comparing its VIN number to the registration documents. Within minutes, it became abundantly clear that Alex was the rightful owner of the vehicle. Karen's arguments crumbled under scrutiny, but she refused to concede defeat. Instead, she grew increasingly agitated, her voice rising as she accused the officers of bias and incompetence. When the police informed her that her claims were unfounded and advised her to stop causing a disturbance, Karen lost her temper. She began shouting insults, berating both Alex and the officers for siding against her. Her behavior prompted the officers to issue a stern warning for disorderly conduct. But when Karen continued yelling, ignoring their instructions to calm down, they had no choice but to place her under arrest. As handcuffs clicked into place around Karen's wrists, the crowd erupted into applause. Cheers and whistles filled the air, punctuated by the occasional sarcastic remark. "Take that, HOA Karen," someone called out, prompting laughter from the group. Karen, red-faced and fuming, protested loudly as she was led away, insisting she was being treated unfairly. But her cries fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the celebratory mood of the neighborhood. For Alex, the relief was palpable. What had started as a simple morning errand had spiraled into an unforgettable ordeal. Yet amidst the chaos, they had remained composed and steadfast, refusing to let Karen's irrational demands shake their resolve. As the police cruisers drove off, taking Karen with them, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication and gratitude for the support of their neighbors. The incident served as a stark reminder of the importance of standing up for oneself, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. For the residents of the gated community, it was a moment of unity, a shared victory against someone who had long wielded power and intimidation. And for Karen, well, her actions that day ensured she would be remembered, not as a respected enforcer of the HOA's rules, but as the woman who tried to claim a Tesla that wasn't hers and ended up in handcuffs instead. As the police continued their investigation, the crowd of neighbors grew larger and more vocal. It was clear that this wasn't just a dispute over a car, it had become a spectacle, a moment of reckoning for Karen's long-standing reign of intimidation within the community. The officers were methodical in their approach, asking both Alex and Karen to provide documentation and statements while carefully examining the Tesla. But as they worked, the neighbors began chiming in with their own stories about Karen's behavior over the years. What started as a parking disagreement had turned into an impromptu town hall meeting, with Karen at the center of everyone's grievances. One neighbor, a middle-aged man named Greg, stepped forward first. He adjusted his glasses nervously before speaking, clearly aware that he was addressing not only the police but also a growing audience. "I've lived here for 5 years," he began, "and let me tell you, Karen has made life difficult for a lot of us. Just last summer, she sent me a formal letter because my recycling bin was visible from the street on collection day. She said it violated some obscure HOA rule about aesthetic harmony." The crowd chuckled and someone shouted, "What aesthetic harmony? We're talking about trash." This earned another round of laughter, further deflating Karen's already fragile composure. Another resident, a young mother named Lisa, joined in. "She once threatened to fine me because my kids left their bikes on the sidewalk for 10 minutes. Lisa recounted, shaking her head. 10 minutes. My son had just learned how to ride without training wheels, and I didn't want him practicing in the driveway where cars could come through. So we used the sidewalk instead. Karen came marching over, saying it was a safety hazard." Lisa paused, looking directly at Karen. "Funny thing is, she drives like a maniac through the neighborhood herself, speeding past kids playing outside." The crowd murmured in agreement, nodding and exchanging knowing glances. Each story added another layer to Karen's reputation as someone who wielded the HOA rules like a weapon, using them to micromanage and bully others. Another neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, spoke up next. "She even complained about my bird feeder," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Said it attracted squirrels, which apparently are against the rules. Can you believe that? Squirrels!" This revelation drew gasps of disbelief from the group. Someone joked, "Maybe she'll start finding the squirrels next." The comment lightened the mood momentarily, but beneath the humor lay a deeper frustration. Many residents felt they'd been living under Karen's thumb for far too long, afraid to speak up for fear of retaliation or endless nitpicking. Now, with the police present and Karen visibly flustered, people finally felt emboldened to share their experiences. Sarah, the neighbor with the nearly identical Tesla, took the opportunity to elaborate on her earlier statement. "Karen has been obsessed with my car for weeks," Sarah explained, her tone calm but firm. "Every time I park near her house, she comes out to stare at it. She's made comments about how nice it must be to afford such a luxury vehicle. At first I thought she was just being nosy, but now I realize she was probably jealous." Sarah glanced at Karen, who was standing stiffly beside one of the officers, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Jealousy doesn't excuse what you're doing today," Sarah continued, her voice rising slightly. "Claiming someone else's property isn't just wrong, it's delusional. You need to take responsibility for your actions." Karen bristled at the accusation, snapping back defensively. "I'm not jealous, I'm just tired of people flaunting their wealth around here. This is a community, not a showroom." Her words hung in the air, met with stunned silence. Then, slowly, a few people started clapping sarcastically. Others joined in, turning the applause into a mocking ovation. Karen's face turned an even deeper shade of red, and she shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing she'd dug herself into an even bigger hole. Amid the growing chorus of complaints, Alex stood quietly, observing the scene unfold. They couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: Relief that so many people were supporting them, but also sadness at the divisiveness Karen had sown within the community. Alex had always tried to stay out of neighborhood drama, focusing instead on maintaining a peaceful existence. But now they understood why some of their neighbors seemed perpetually stressed or annoyed. Living under Karen's constant scrutiny must have been exhausting. The officers, meanwhile, listened patiently to the testimonies, jotting down notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. While none of these stories directly related to the Tesla incident, they painted a broader picture of Karen's character and behavior. One officer leaned over to his partner and whispered something, gesturing toward Karen. The other nodded, scribbling something in his notebook. It was clear that Karen's credibility was crumbling, not just in the eyes of the public but also in the eyes of law enforcement. As the crowd continued sharing their grievances, Karen's demeanor shifted subtly. Gone was the fiery confidence she'd displayed earlier. In its place was a mix of anger and defensiveness. She crossed her arms tightly across her chest, glaring at anyone who dared speak against her. Occasionally, she muttered under her breath, though her words were drowned out by the steady stream of accusations coming from the crowd. Finally, one of the officers stepped forward, raising his hand to signal for quiet. "All right, folks," he said in a firm but respectful tone. "We appreciate your input, but we need to focus on resolving the matter at hand." The crowd gradually fell silent, though a few people lingered nearby, reluctant to leave until they saw how things played out. Turning to Karen, the officer asked, "Ma'am, do you have any proof that this vehicle belongs to you?" Karen hesitated, her jaw tightening as she realized the weight of the question. After a long pause, she stammered, It has to be mine. Everything adds up. The color, the model. It's exactly what I would buy if I could afford it." Her admission sent ripples of disbelief through the crowd. A few people exchanged incredulous looks, while others shook their heads in exasperation. Even the officers struggled to maintain neutral expressions. One of them gently reminded Karen, "Ma'am, wanting something doesn't make it yours. Ownership is determined by legal documentation, not personal feelings." Karen's shoulders slumped, defeated. For the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed to grasp the absurdity of her position. But rather than apologizing or backing down, she lashed out, accusing the officers of bias and insisting they were conspiring with Alex to discredit her. Her voice rose sharply, drawing attention from passers-by who hadn't yet joined the gathering. When the officers warned her again to lower her voice and cooperate, Karen ignored them, continuing to rant and rave. Her escalating behavior forced the officers to intervene more decisively. "Ma'am, you're disturbing the peace," one of them said firmly. "If you don't calm down, we'll have no choice but to take further action." Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Further action? What are you going to do, arrest me for telling the truth?" Her sarcasm dripped with defiance, but it only sealed her fate. When she refused to comply with their instructions, the officers placed her under arrest, reading her rights as they cuffed her hands behind her back. The crowd erupted once again, this time in cheers and applause. Some people whistled while others clapped rhythmically, creating a celebratory atmosphere. Karen, now visibly humiliated, protested loudly as she was led to the police cruiser. "You'll all regret this," she shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "Mark my words, I'll make sure justice is served." But her threats fell on deaf ears. As the cruiser pulled away, taking Karen to the station, the crowd dispersed, slowly, buzzing with excitement and relief. For many residents, this felt like a turning point, a moment when the balance of power shifted away from Karen and back toward the community she had tried so hard to dominate. For Alex, the experience was both surreal and enlightening. They had never imagined that a simple morning errand could spiral into such a dramatic confrontation. Yet, as they watched their neighbors come together to support them, they realized that sometimes standing up for yourself can inspire others to do the same. And while Karen's antics might not disappear overnight, her arrest marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where fairness and reason triumphed over intimidation and entitlement. As the police cruiser disappeared down the street with Karen in the back seat, The crowd of neighbors lingered for a while longer, buzzing with excitement and disbelief. The entire scene had unfolded like something out of a movie, a mix of absurdity, tension, and eventual triumph. For many residents, it felt like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. Years of frustration, pent-up anger, and fear of retaliation from Karen had finally boiled over, culminating in this unexpected showdown. People milled about, sharing stories, laughing nervously, and shaking their heads at what they'd just witnessed. Alex stood near the Tesla, still processing everything that had happened. They couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. Relief that the confrontation was over, gratitude for the overwhelming support from their neighbors, and a lingering sense of disbelief that things had escalated so quickly. A few people approached Alex to offer kind words or pats on the back. "You handled that perfectly," one neighbor said warmly. "Karen's been needing someone to stand up to her for years." Another added, "Honestly, thank you for doing what we've all wanted to do but were too scared to try." Despite the positive reinforcement, Alex knew this wasn't just about them. It was about the community as a whole. Karen's behavior had cast a long shadow over the neighborhood, creating an atmosphere of unease and division. Now, with her dramatic exit, there was a chance for healing and rebuilding. As Alex spoke briefly with some of the officers, thanking them for their professionalism, they couldn't help but wonder how this incident would shape the future of the gated community. The officers wrapped up their investigation by confirming Alex's ownership of the Tesla. They reviewed the registration papers, cross-checked the VIN number, and even took photos of the car for their records. Every detail aligned perfectly, leaving no room for doubt. Once satisfied, they handed Alex a copy of the report and advised them to keep it handy in case Karen decided to pursue any baseless legal action later on. "We'll make sure everything is documented properly," one officer assured Alex. "But, based on today's events, I wouldn't worry too much." With the official part of the matter resolved, the officers prepared to leave. Before getting into their cruiser, one of them turned to address the remaining crowd. "Thank you all for your cooperation," he said, his tone warm and appreciative. "It's always helpful when the community works together to resolve issues. If anyone has further concerns or needs assistance, don't hesitate to reach out." His words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement. Many residents appreciated the officer's calm and respectful approach, which had helped de-escalate what could have easily spiraled into chaos. As the second police cruiser drove away, the crowd began to disperse slowly. Some neighbors returned to their homes, while others gathered in small groups to discuss what had just happened. Conversations ranged from lighthearted jokes about Karen's meltdown to more serious reflections on how to prevent similar situations in the future. One suggestion that gained traction was organizing a neighborhood meeting to review the HOA's rules and ensure they were being applied fairly. "We need transparency," someone said firmly. "No more secret complaints or selective enforcement." Another resident chimed in, proposing the idea of electing new members to the HOA board. "Karen's had too much control for too long," they argued. "It's time for fresh faces, people who actually care about the community instead of using it as their personal playground." This idea was met with enthusiastic support, and several volunteers stepped forward to help organize the process. It was clear that the day's events had sparked a renewed sense of unity and purpose among the residents. Meanwhile, Alex took a moment to reflect privately. Despite the whirlwind of activity, they couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's action stemmed from something deeper than mere pettiness. Was it jealousy, insecurity, or perhaps a desperate need for validation? Whatever the reason, it was evident that Karen's behavior had crossed a line, one that not only affected her relationships with others, but also isolated her within the very community she claimed to protect. Alex wondered if, deep down, Karen realized the damage she had caused, or if she would continue to blame everyone else for her problems. Back at home, Alex decided to take proactive steps to avoid future conflicts. They installed a dash cam in their Tesla, reasoning that it would provide an extra layer of security in case anyone ever tried to accuse them of wrongdoing again. Additionally, they spent some time reviewing the HOA's bylaws, making notes of specific rules and procedures to ensure they were fully informed moving forward. While Alex didn't want to dwell on the negativity of the day, they understood the importance of being prepared. Over the next few days, news of the incident spread rapidly beyond the gated community. Videos captured by neighbors went viral on social media, racking up millions of views and sparking lively debates online. Dubbed Tesla Karen by internet users, Karen became a symbol of unchecked entitlement and misuse of authority. Memes featuring her infamous claim, "That's my Tesla," flooded platforms like Twitter and Instagram, often accompanied by captions poking fun at her audacity. Some commenters expressed sympathy for Alex, praising their composure during such a bizarre ordeal. Others used the opportunity to vent about their own experiences with difficult neighbors or HOA disputes. Within the gated community itself, life began to return to normal, but with noticeable changes. Residents seemed friendlier, more willing, to greet each other with smiles and waves. Conversations flowed more freely, unburdened by the constant fear of Karen's scrutiny. Even those who had previously kept to themselves started participating in neighborhood activities, eager to contribute to the newfound sense of camaraderie. Karen, meanwhile, eventually returned to the community after posting bail. Her reappearance was met with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Would she attempt to reclaim her role as the HOA enforcer? Or would she retreat into obscurity, humiliated by her public downfall? At first, Karen kept a low profile, avoiding eye contact with her neighbors and steering clear of communal spaces like the clubhouse or pool area. But rumors circulated that she was considering moving to a different neighborhood, one with fewer restrictions and less oversight. Ironically, Karen's obsession with luxury cars persisted even after her arrest. According to whispers among the residents, she had quietly sold her old sedan and purchased, you guessed it, a brand new Tesla. Whether this decision was driven by spite, stubbornness, or genuine admiration for the vehicle, no one could say for sure. What was certain, however, was that Karen's reputation had been irreparably tarnished. She was no longer seen as the formidable gatekeeper of the HOA. Instead, she was remembered as the woman who tried to steal a Tesla and ended up in handcuffs. For Alex, the experience served as a valuable lesson about resilience and standing firm in the face of irrational demands. They had entered the day expecting nothing more than a routine meeting, only to find themselves at the center of a surreal drama. Yet through it all, they had remained calm, composed, and focused on finding a resolution. In the end, the support of their neighbors and the intervention of law enforcement had turned a potentially disastrous situation into a victory, not just for Alex, but for the entire community. Life in the gated neighborhood carried on, but with a renewed spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. The incident with Karen became a cautionary tale, reminding everyone of the importance of fairness, transparency, and kindness. And though Karen might still lurk in the background, forever remembered as Tesla Karen, the power she once wielded had been diminished. For the first time in years, the residents felt truly free to enjoy their homes without living in fear of her wrath. In the weeks that followed Karen's arrest, the gated community underwent a transformation. The tension and fear that had once hung over the neighborhood like a storm cloud began to lift, replaced by a renewed sense of camaraderie and optimism. People who had previously avoided each other out of discomfort or distrust now found themselves exchanging warm greetings and striking up conversations. It was as if Karen's dramatic exit had cleared the air, allowing residents to breathe freely, for the first time in years. For Alex, this shift was both heartening and inspiring. They had never imagined that standing up to one person could have such a profound impact on an entire community. The incident quickly became the stuff of legend within the neighborhood. Neighbors gathered at barbecues, pool parties, and casual get-togethers, retelling the story with varying degrees of embellishment. Some joked about how Karen had tried to manifest the Tesla into her possession simply by staring at it long enough. Others speculated about what might have been going through her mind when she accused Alex of theft. One particularly creative neighbor even suggested turning the story into a short film, casting themselves as Karen and recruiting Alex to play their own role. While nothing came of the idea, It brought laughter and lightheartedness to the group, further strengthening their bond. Social media played a significant part in spreading the tale beyond the confines of the gated community. Videos of the confrontation, captured by neighbors' phones, went viral almost overnight. Memes featuring Karen's iconic line, "That's my Tesla," flooded platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Comment sections buzzed with reactions ranging from disbelief to hilarity. Many people expressed sympathy for Alex, praising their patience and composure during such an absurd situation. Others shared their own stories of dealing with difficult HOA members or overly controlling neighbors, creating a sense of solidarity among strangers online. But not everyone viewed the incident through rose-tinted glasses. A small faction of residents still defended Karen, arguing that she had simply been misunderstood. These individuals claimed that the stress of managing the HOA's responsibilities must have gotten to her, leading to her erratic behavior. "She just cares too much," one neighbor insisted during a heated discussion at the clubhouse. You can't fault someone for wanting the best for the community. Most dismissed these arguments as excuses, pointing out that caring shouldn't come at the expense of others' peace of mind. Still, the debate highlighted the complexity of human relationships and the difficulty of letting go of old grudges, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Karen herself remained largely absent from public view after her release from custody. When she did venture outside, she kept to herself, avoiding eye contact with her neighbors and steering clear of communal areas. Gone was the fiery confidence she had once displayed. In its place was a quiet defensiveness. She no longer attended HOA meetings or sent emails nitpicking minor infractions. Instead, she seemed content to fade into the background, observing from afar while trying to rebuild her life. Rumors swirled about her next moves. Some said she was considering selling her house and moving to a less restrictive community. Others claimed she had joined a local yoga class in an effort to find inner peace. But perhaps the most ironic twist came when word spread that Karen had purchased a brand new Tesla, a decision that baffled and amused her neighbors in equal measure. Whether she bought it out of spite, stubbornness, or genuine admiration for the vehicle, no one knew for sure. What was certain, however, was that every time she drove past Alex's house, heads turned and whispers filled the air. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who had tried so desperately to claim someone else's Tesla now owned one herself. For Alex, life gradually returned to normal, or as close to normal as possible after such a bizarre experience. They resumed their daily routines, attending work meetings, running errands, and enjoying quiet evenings at home. Yet the memory of that fateful day lingered, serving as a reminder of the importance of standing firm in the face of adversity. Alex often reflected on how differently things might have turned out if they had reacted impulsively or allowed Karen's accusations to rattle them. Staying calm and composed had not only helped resolve the situation, but also earned them the respect and admiration of their neighbors. Determined to prevent similar conflicts in the future, Alex took several proactive steps. In addition to installing a dashcam in their Tesla, they familiarized themselves with the HOA's bylaws, ensuring they understood every rule and regulation. They also attended a neighborhood meeting organized by fellow residents to discuss potential reforms within the association. At the meeting, ideas flowed freely, implementing transparent voting processes for HOA leadership positions, establishing clear guidelines for filing complaints, and encouraging open communication between residents and board members. The energy in the room was palpable, a testament to the community's newfound determination to create a fairer and more inclusive environment. One proposal that gained widespread support was the creation of a neighborhood liaison role, a neutral party tasked with mediating disputes and addressing concerns before they escalated. Several residents volunteered for the position, including Alex, who saw it as an opportunity to give back to the community. After a brief selection process, a committee of 3 liaisons was formed, with Alex serving as one of its founding members. Their goal was simple: foster understanding, promote fairness, and ensure that everyone felt heard and valued. As the months passed, the gated community continued to thrive. The changes implemented following Karen's arrest breathed new life into the neighborhood, transforming it into a place where kindness and cooperation took precedence over control and intimidation. Residents organized more events than ever before: potluck, dinners, holiday celebrations, and volunteer projects aimed at beautifying shared spaces. Even those who had once kept to themselves became active participants, eager to contribute to the positive atmosphere. Karen eventually announced her intention to sell her house and move away. Though she didn't provide a specific reason, many suspected it had something to do with the frosty reception she received from her neighbors. Her departure was met with mixed emotions. Some felt relief, believing her absence would allow the community to heal fully. Others, despite their grievances, couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. After all, Karen had been a fixture in the neighborhood for years, and her downfall served as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and misplaced priorities. On the day Karen's moving truck arrived, a handful of curious neighbors gathered to watch silently as her belongings were loaded onto the vehicle. She exchanged polite but distant goodbyes with a few acquaintances, avoiding eye contact with Alex entirely. As the truck pulled away, taking Karen to whatever awaited her next chapter, the crowd dispersed quietly. There was no celebration, no cheers or applause, just a collective sigh of relief that the drama had finally come to an end. For Alex, the experience left an indelible mark. They had entered the day expecting nothing more than a routine meeting, only to find themselves thrust into a whirlwind of chaos and absurdity. Yet through it all, they had remained steadfast, relying on logic, patience, and the unwavering support of their neighbors to navigate the storm. In doing so, they had not only reclaimed their dignity but also inspired others to stand up against injustice and embrace unity. Looking back, Alex realized that the true victory wasn't just about exposing Karen's irrational behavior, it was about bringing the community together. By standing up for themselves, they had inadvertently sparked a movement toward transparency, fairness, and mutual respect. And while the scars of Karen's reign might take time to fully heal, the seeds of change had already been planted. Life in the gated community carried on, brighter and more hopeful than ever before. The incident with Karen became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of entitlement and the importance of treating others with kindness and empathy. For Alex and their neighbors, it was also a story of resilience, a testament to the power of standing firm, staying calm, and trusting in the strength of a united community. And though Karen might always be remembered as Tesla Karen, her legacy was one of lessons learned and bridges rebuilt.